from the Pathway Studios in Johnston proper. You are live from the path.
And you're listening to Live from the Path. We're coming to you from the Pathway Studios here in Johnston proper. It's good to be with you this fine evening. If you're watching on the net, did anybody catch the advertisement there?
No, I didn't.
No, I didn't.
What is it?
It's for Stu Hansen's Dodge City.
Yes.
Awesome.
Open ears are useless without an open mind. Love Stu Hansen.
I do business with Stu Hansen.
What do you mean? What do you buy from Stu Hansen?
I take my work truck in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You don't fix your own work truck?
No, that'd be foolish.
Okay, fair enough. Here's what we got going on the show tonight. All right, Dave Herrick's got some Pope-style advice. I've got some Pope-style advice. We're going to try to catch up on the article from last week, which is escaping me what it was about. I feel like I'll come to it, though. So we're going to find that.
It was like 5 things about meaningful something. I don't remember. Okay.
It's basically the same article we hash through every week. It's just
5 things about meaningful something.
with a new title.
Yeah. You'll never believe how, whatever.
Do you want to just start over again?
5 things Christians say about stuff,
Oh, man.
and a quiz to go along with it.
Crap, I'm still looking around. I can't really find it. All right. So anyway, that's what I think I got going on the show tonight. We've got some Dear Live from the Past coming on, and so we'll hit those. Also, hey, if you were listening last week and didn't, or if you didn't check out last week, you missed the performances of Wayne Stewart and Jacob Stewart and Chris Takers.
It was good. It was real good.
Yeah, they did a great job. In fact, I only got some of the clips up already. You can catch one clip apiece from each of those guys, and hopefully I can get the rest out maybe this week. But make sure you check that stuff out. Those guys did a great job. I started reading Wayne's book on worship, and it's very good. It's really good, and so I'm going to finish it, and then, like I said, maybe we'll have a little bit of that discussion here, and see what that looks like. But anyway, make sure you check that stuff out. Give those guys a shout out, and then follow them on the Facebook so you can see what they're up to and be part of that kind of stuff. Sounds very, very cool. All right, well, I tell you what, Dave Herrick, let's fire it up with Pope style. Mike, give him a heads up as to what Pope style advice is.
So basically, the deal is that a group of ne'er-do-wells have convinced the town folk that Dave Herrick is the Pope, and being sparked with enthusiasm, they thought, well, the Pope gives out words of wisdom. We're going to go to his place, and so now Dave Herrick's got thousands of dudes on his lawn that are expectantly waiting for some advice, and Dave Herrick's got to come up with something to clear him off and set him out on their day.
Yeah, so that happened this past weekend. It was the strangest thing. Just this random group of people just followed me around, and I actually went caving this weekend, and so I went deep into the earth and
Dedicated Pope followers.
went with yeah, there were, and I went down into the deepest recesses, and then I find these like 1,000 people just hanging out deep in the bowels of the earth waiting for me, and they said I couldn't leave unless I give them some kind of advice.
That feels like Michael Jackson's Beat It video. I don't know why. Bunch of dudes down in the dark place looking to start a rumble.
I mean, the earth was pretty intimidating by itself because, it doesn't move. You have to squeeze through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and then I've got all these people now, and they're expecting something from me. So I started talking about faith and thought, hey, this seems like a good thing to talk about. So, here's what I said. One of the things that when it comes to faith and us trusting in God is what we like is we like for God to give us a confirmation and then for us to believe, and then we'll obey. And so we like that kind of order. But that's not exactly the order that real faith takes. In fact, if you're waiting around for the confirmation before you're willing to trust and obey, then it's not really trust. That's actually just a conclusion to a matter. That's you've observed, and now you've got a conclusion. And what we're really called to is, we'll come to Jesus, and He'll ask us for our faith, and then He'll call us to a state of obedience. And if you're hanging around waiting for some kind of confirmation from God, that comes later. You can see it in the encounters with Jesus. People will come up to Jesus and they'll say, hey, will you heal my son or daughter or whatever's going on? And Jesus will say, yeah, they're healed. Now, it's funny because oftentimes in that scene, there's no confirmation whatsoever going on. It's just Jesus is saying it, and then he tells them, go ahead and go. And so that leaves the person in that awkward position of, okay, am I trusting you, Jesus? Can you give me some kind of a sign or some kind of way that I don't want to really risk something until I've got some kind of confirmation. And Jesus says, no, you risk. I want you to obey first. You're going to risk, and then the confirmation's going to come after that. So the order that we like is confirmation, then faith, then obedience. But the order that Jesus demands of us is, no, you're going to trust. And in response to that trust, then you're going to obey, and then the confirmation is going to come.
So I actually have a question on that.
Sure.
Because I think where a lot of the doubt comes in is whether you feel like you've heard it correctly or you've manufactured it and trying to decide where the source from. Like, is this really God's doing? Especially if there's any hint of that it might benefit you at all. Right, because then you start to think, well, this is of course something that I would push for, and I don't know whether it's coming from God or not. And then so you take a real tepid approach to, trying to decide whether this came from God or not. So how do you handle that with the same frame of mind that you're presenting?
So that's where the obedience comes in, and you take the obedience in a step of, we're testing this out, we're trying. Because the confirmation is going to come after you take that risk, those steps. You're moving forward. So you're not entirely certain. There's going to be some hesitation involved in it. I mean, that's natural. There isn't really faith without also a presence of doubt that's part of the backdrop. But in spite of the doubt, you take steps, and those are steps of obedience. Those are steps of, I'm not 100% certain that this is exactly what God wants me to do, but it seems that this is what I'm being called to, so I'm going to take some steps. And then in response to those risks, that's when the confirmation starts coming. And that's when you get more assurance of, okay, yeah, that really is the genuine faith. That's the direction that I should be going. It's something that there's risk inherent to the system.
Would you say that most maybe people of the faith are risk averse? Like they just don't like the risk. Like God, since God is certain, the task that He's asking you to do should be certain, and so they just feel very averse to any type of risk like that.
I think that it's not just people of faith. It's our culture and society in general. We don't want to risk unless we absolutely need to. We'd much rather take a safe bet. I mean, who wants to take a gamble and throw everything that they've accumulated, everything that their life has meaning about, into one quick crap shot just to see if it goes up or down? Everyone's looking for, how do I manage that risk? We're averse to it. But the thing is, risk is inherent to any kind of relationship. Any significant relationship, there's going to be vulnerability involved in that. And so you've got to take risks in order to grow in a relationship, especially a relationship with God. And trust is going to be built upon that risk, that vulnerability that you're seeing. Now, what's kind of neat about it is the entrance to this whole system. It'll usually start with, hey, God, I've got a need. Something has just happened, and I need your help with something. So you go to God and say, hey, my life is falling apart, or I'm in debt way over my head, or whatever is happening. You go to God, and then that's when the faith part starts. Is God will say, all right, I see that you're in debt up to your eyeballs. I want you to give. Wait, you want me to give? No, I want you to fill my bank account so that I'm out of debt. And God says, no, I want you to give. Just trust me that I'll take care of the debt. But I need you to start giving. That's step one. And so here's God calling you to a state of action before you even have any kind of evidence that God's actually got it under control. So He's called you to that. So you've got a need that's going on. You also have prior history. You have a little bit of an understanding that God's got a couple of things under control. You also have other people around you that have said, hey, this God is trustworthy. You haven't exactly experienced it yourself, but you're looking through and you're figuring some of these things out. So you've got a little bit of evidence around you indicating that God is the one to turn to for this. Those evidences are then catalysts. There's something that by you taking your step of faith, you obeying God, and then having that confirmation afterwards, that's the catalyst for other people in their steps of faith. That's what people are going to look at and say, hey, I see how God was faithful in this person's life. Maybe he'll be faithful in my life in a similar way. It's something that ends up multiplying. Because you take a step of faith, it ends up spawning more faith in other people.
And if you think about it, like that's very much the program of which Jesus was asking and is demonstrated through with the disciples, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when they're waiting for this Messiah, this kingdom to kind of release them from their oppression, and they say we need to fight, and Jesus says you need to die,
Mm-hmm.
and like. And even when he's up against the Pharisees and they're talking about dropping these laws, these things that otherwise gave them identity, and he's trying to redirect that.
Mm-hmm.
They're having to trust him, and it's all about who God is, right? Like it's all tied up in if He is who He is, then that our natural reaction should actually be to trust that He's got things under control. Whereas we want Him to keep validating what it is that we believe or think that we believe about who He is, and because we leave it as a contingent, as perhaps He's not, right? Perhaps He will not validate that He is who He says He is. Perhaps
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't indeed have it under control, and like every aspect of which it looks like Jesus didn't have anything control. It's just because it was part of a bigger picture, which God most certainly had it under control, and we were unwilling to release ours and let God take His.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's true. I think that's actually running smack dab into the realities of saying, I will bear the cross for you. Like I will give up everything about my life, and I will do what you want, and trust that you got it under control, heavy or not. And that's kind of a rubber meets the road deal. Is we still want some sort of inkling. God, just give me a little. And the thing is like He'll fight you tooth and nail for that little you want to keep, because you're still missing it. You're still missing it if you still are asking, I just want a little. And it says that I don't trust that you've got it under control. And like we're foolish to think, even as Christians, we're foolish to think that is not a giant thing that God is asking. He knows very well that it's a big thing to ask, to give up everything that you are. And like if you understand correctly, I think you should feel to understand the consequence of what Jesus is actually asking. I think a lot of I don't know what I would say, kind of bland faith comes from the thought that like we feel like we've given God all He's asked for, and we just simply misunderstood what He's asked for. And so I think if we understand that correctly, it puts your life at very much a crux. It's a crossroads moment to say, do I trust Him with all this stuff? And as opposed to saying, well, show me God a little bit, and then I will give you more. Like we switch the roles of the faith of the steward, right? We like if I give you a little or give you a lot. That we kind of switch roles, and we get to be God and hand stuff out and then see what we trust God to do and see if He multiplies it and whether we give Him more. And we've got that whole scenario backwards. But that's a reasonable thing to do if that's the position you're in. But we're not in that position. God's in that position. And so we kind of have to give up that concept, but it puts us in kind of a rough circumstance because it means you've got to be willing to turn it all over with absolutely no additional evidence specifically in your life.
Yeah.
That's a tough road.
Quite often, the thing that God is asking you to give up is exactly the idol that has been replacing Him. So, like if it's finances and you're saying, hey, God, I will give as soon as I see that you've put money in the bank. Well, that's because our trust is in finances, in money in the bank. And God's saying, no, you trust in me. So now give away those finances, those things that are essentially your idol. You can live your life and trust that. And what we're asking from God is, I want to trust you, God, but I also want to trust this other thing. I want to keep that other idol. And God's like, no, you're going to give that up.
Right.
There's no other gods before me. There is one, and that's Him. So He'll start off by just asking you, hey, give this up. Get rid of it. Just whatever that initial step of obedience, it often takes that kind of flavor of, we're going to do some housekeeping.
Right. Sometimes you got to tip Dagon over to actually make some progress with some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All right. How'd you guys get in this cave? This is crazy.
I followed a guy that looked like the Pope. Turns out he was the janitor.
All right.
Hey, man, there's no way I'm getting in that cave.
Who wears a white robe to a cave?
A man that makes mistakes. You're not going to fit through there with that hat on, sir.
You're listening to Live from the Path on livefromthepath.org. Broadcasting every Monday night live, some from 10-ish to ish.
Yeah.
Whenever we wrap it up. You can catch the show still playing on 99.3 KTIA in the Des Moines area coming up very soon, running Saturdays at 7 p.m. And you should definitely plan on going out to the website and checking out all the past clips from the shows. Get hooked up with the podcast, and then check out some of the musical acts we had in last week. Like Ben was saying, we had Chris Akers and the Stewarts in here, and they rocked it. They always do. They put out some pretty solid tunes, but it was a pretty good time. I listened back to the show, and it's well worth the hour and some that I think it took to get it through.
Yeah, I agree. Also, before we get too far down the road, a big thanks to our sponsors, Bob Eisenhower with the Eisenhower team. Go to EisenhowerTeam.com. Now may or may not be the time to buy or sell a house. Bob and his team know better than we do. So give them a call. If you just want to snoop around and see what's out there, you can go to EisenhowerTeam.com and you can catch the current listings and just see if there's something out there. I'll tell you this, is like I randomly search probably every 4 to 6 weeks. I just do a search and see what properties are out there, because like you never know what you might be missing. What might be kind of in your range or might be hanging out there for you. So
you know what search criteria they don't have? Because like I will decide that I'm going to find a new house when it gets real windy at my house. I think I hate wind. It's got to be somewhere where it ain't so windy.
What made you think of that this weekend?
Yeah, because it's been windy, you know? And so I went out, you know, and like I'll go onto the Realtor.com or whatever, or go to Bob's website and look and see what he's got available, you know, and there's no search criteria that gets rid of wind. I thought, well, forget it. I ain't moving then.
No, that seems fair. So anyway, go to EisenhowerTeam.com. Also, Westfield Veterinary Hospital. Go to WestfieldVetHospital.com. They can help you with all your pet care needs. And look, they're going to handle things that are best for your pet and best for your pocketbook. They can help you make good decisions about the long-term health of your dog, cat, horse, whatever small creatures you might have in your place, lizard. Bring it all in. It's a vet hospital. They didn't. If they wanted to limit to certain animals, they wouldn't have said vet hospital. They would have said cat hospital.
Yeah.
Right. They do the works in there. They do great jobs. Where I take my dogs, it's where Mike takes his a random I don't know, menagerie of animals that's at his place. And so go to WestfieldVetHospital.com. You can, if you go to that website, you can set up an appointment online. You can do it right now on your undies. None of this putting it off till tomorrow and saying, you know, looking Fido in the eyes and saying, oh well, maybe I'll get to this tomorrow, friend. And then how many tomorrows have passed? All right, you should be ashamed of yourself. They won't guilt you, but I certainly will. Go to WestfieldVetHospital.com and they can help you out with that. All right, so here's the deal: is Herrick starts having this conversation with people as a pseudo pope, and he gives something that seems like reasonable pope style advice, and then they need a new pope.
Yeah, they didn't like what I had to say. I mean, a lot of them just left and said, "Nuts with this guy."
Yeah, nuts with this guy.
Was a cave, for heaven's sake.
Well, that's true. It's not believable.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm driving down the road, and there's like 10,000 people following me, and I agree to take only a few of them in the car.
Hey, which road was this?
62nd.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. That's where people come after me.
Okay.
Anyway, so anyway, I'm driving down the road, and I say, "Hop in, boys, Pope style time," because I can give them mobile Pope, and then they have to get out of my car. So here's the Pope style advice: stop quoting Bible verses to people.
Okay.
Stop quoting Bible verses to people. So here's how I came to this week. I was having a hypothetical conversation via text message with John Mayer. Anybody familiar with John Mayer? Guitar man.
Yes.
Music man, okay? So anyway, I was driving home from church, and for some reason, I got the idea that I might run into John Mayer at the gas station. And then I thought, what would I say to a John Mayer? Because I feel like he should love Jesus. And so I thought, well, if I were to strike up a hypothetical conversation with John Mayer, I would say, hi, how you doing? I would talk to John. I would say something quippy, and he would remember me. And but I would say something, I'm coming from church. I would make it known that I'm a Jesus man. And then I would say something about, you remember the phrase I said from that story, like if such and such fails you, give me a call. Yeah. So I was going to find something that I could say to John Mayer when like, hey man, it looks like you live a pretty cool life. When you find yourself at some point where it's let you down, give me a call. Okay, so I thought that's the wisdom. That's the whiz bang for John Mayer. He's going to give me the text. And so I give him we exchange digits. And then he sends me a text message and starts asking me random questions about Jesus, like big, heavy things that he wants to sort out. And then I thought to myself, like, you want to respond with biblical wisdom. But then it occurred to me that, like, how people would receive biblical wisdom, because you always say something that the Bible said, and then you put the verse on it. And you took something that is applicable to someone's life, like true, honest wisdom, things that should change how people think about the world, and then you made it academic. Mm-hmm. Because you took a biblical bit of encouragement or wisdom or truth, and then you added a reference to it, and it would be the same thing as if someone were to say, "Hey, what does this word mean?" And then like I attach a dictionary page number and additional information, like made something very academic that I could answer in a very human way. And so I thought we got to stop doing that. We got to stop doing that. Because we pull a human conversation and it feels more academic. It feels like we're almost if you're saying, here you go, look it up. I
Yeah.
could be lying. Like, I'm not lying. It's like our quotes should be followed with bit of wisdom dash Jesus. Bit of information about your life dash Paul.
Yeah.
Like, because that's how everyone else communicates quotes by someone else. People don't go Abraham Lincoln, page 7, paragraph 3, Gettysburg Address, unless they're otherwise trying to harass someone that you don't understand how the government works. Then, but that's an academic dispute. So anyway, I just, it feels like a very minor thing, but it occurred to me in a hypothetical text conversation with John Mayer that I would have tried to address a serious faith question, wondering about the ins and outs of the universe, who God is, what does he think of us, and I took what is a very human desire to want to understand those things, and I made it academic if I attached a verse number to it.
You know, actually, I find this oddly true when I listen to sermons. Like, for some reason, I really appreciate when people say, Paul was at the church in Corinth and he was talking about this, and then they basically just quote Paul and don't throw the Bible verse in there. And I don't know why it seems more real to me, like it happened and it was and this was the mood. Like when the Bible verse isn't attached to it, but for some reason it does. Like it feels like a conversation that had happened earlier that day when I said, my wife was talking to our daughter and she said this, and I don't say in the book of whatever with connotations. For some reason it feels more real when you don't tie it to the Bible. And there's nothing wrong with having the actual reference if people don't believe you. But like I don't know, when you do purvey it as a conversation that happened, especially when Jesus is talking, like Jesus said this when he was talking to his folks. He said, "Blah." I don't know. I do find that a little easier to connect with, and I'm not exactly sure why.
Well, and I had we were at a conference a couple years ago, and Andy Stanley was there. He's a relatively well-known guy from the South, a pastor. And one of the things he said was, if like you want to help people who don't know Jesus to know Jesus, you have to have conversations with them on something that they could digest, right? So like if you're going to say Paul, they need to know who Paul is. Mm-hmm. If you're going to say you're going to talk about some of these guys, like give them the context. And it changed sometimes of how I talk about things. Is I don't tend to say Paul said X, Y, Z without explaining the context of why what Paul thinks would be important in this circumstance, and like even a brief sentence on his background. A guy who thought Jesus wasn't the guy, and then he interacts with Jesus and everything changes. That's Paul, right? And so like even that changes the conversation, how you understand that. And it was just something, it was a blind spot for me because I wouldn't have thought about that. Yeah. And frankly, it helps you interact with some of those guys. Like they're people. You tell a story about Rumpelstiltskin, and like you can always refer to him in that way and without context because like everyone knows that's a story, right? But like even when we talk about Bible stories, like these are real people interacting with a real God, real circumstances, real things that we can take away. And I think sometimes it becomes a little too academic because of how we reference it. And it's such a minor thing to not do that I think makes that it's not that it's more palatable. Like the truth is still the truth. It just, I think you catch it more in the terms of what it was, right? Like those Bible verses and chapters weren't there until centuries later. And so there's no reason, they're not holy. It just, I think it allows people to connect with it better. So Pope style advice for me and for you is like, just know your audience on who you're talking to, and allow people to connect with Scripture on a human level as if there were humans in it, because there were. And maybe save the verses and stuff for academic conversations or people who are going to challenge you on it.
Yeah. I mean, people who don't know Jesus don't care that it's in the book of Ephesians. They think, am I like the Ephesians? Is that what you're saying? Or am I like the guy talking?
Yeah.
Like, that's what they want to know. And they will care later. But like, when you were talking, I just thought, my daughter knows all the books of the Old Testament. Does she know what's in all the books of the Old Testament? No. Well, this is backwards. You know what I'm saying? Like, right. I don't care whether she knows whether a certain passage is from Daniel or not. I care that she knows that something happened to Daniel. Yeah. What happened to Daniel? What happened to Saul? What happened to these people, right? Like, if she can't tell me what book it's in, I don't know that I really care, right? I want her to get God's spirit, God's heart, and the people, and the way that people interacted with God. And, like, if we could do that, opposed to her being able to rattle off in order the books of the Old Testament, I take the former.
Right, because the truth is those things will come, right? Like,
yeah.
The things that we...
Maybe. I mean, I if I get to into my life and I don't know the Old Testament books in order,
I guess what I'm saying is that, like, I mean, it's helpful to know that you understand the arc of it better But here's the deal: is like as you study and understand the stories and how things connect in God's big narrative, like you will just start to inherently know those things. I don't know that you have to specifically spend time trying, is what I'm getting at for those types of things. It was the same concept of kind of what we were talking on. Dan was talking about on Sunday. Is that like we tend to be focused on the concerns about what does the output look like? How can I tell X, Y, and Z, as opposed to look, if you love and follow Jesus, the things that I'm concerned about you changing in your life, Jesus will change for you. Like he will work in your life to get those things done. What we try to do is like shine them up on the other side, not for Jesus to accept them, but as proof that something has happened. And like it's just a tail wagging the dog. And so it's kind of that same concept. Like the only reason I know anything about where certain scripture is located, because I'm terrible at memorizing things, is because I read my Bible often enough, and I care where it's at. I remember what story it was and the argument that was being discussed, and I think, yeah, that meant something to me. And so where's that story at? And I remember it's in Romans because I remember the conversation that it sits in. And I remember that happened to the church in Rome, what was distinct about them. Not because I said, always remember what happened in Romans. It's because, yes, the church in Rome was having this issue. It must have been in Paul's letter to the church in Rome.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's Pope style advice. You guys got to get out to car. Hopefully I'm going to run into John Mayer at the at the Casey's.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to agree to text me like I thought. But on the off chance he does,
They almost never do.
I'm ready.
Sometimes I think that me and Denzel Washington would be real good friends.
That's believable.
I haven't heard from him at all.
You want me to hit him up on a Twitter?
Yeah, just say, hey, I think my brother Mike and you would get along real well, and see if he responds.
Okay.
And then if he's cool with it, like, let me know, and then, we'll talk from there.
Is this the real Denzel? Hold on. Official Denzel Washington Twitter.
No, I don't want to talk to his handlers. I want to talk to Denzel only.
This can't be him. One tweet, 16. Oh, he's following 16 people. Okay, anyway, I'll check into Denzel.
Yeah, see if he wants to be my friend.
He likes a lot of weird stuff.
Oh, no. I don't get down on that, whatever it is.
Yeah, all right, here we go. Relevant Magazine. Guy with backpack standing outside with an oversized watch looking at a sunset. And he says, 6 problems with trying to be sold out for Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
I used to be a radical Christian.
I bet.
No, I didn't preach on street corners or drive an RV covered in doomsday verses. But I did drop out of college at age 20 to become a full-time missionary in Africa. In the last few years, books about Christ-centered compassion for the poor have skyrocketed to the top of bestsellers lists. Coney 2012, an awareness campaign conceived by younger Christians, went viral. Katie Davis, a young woman barely older than I, made headlines when she moved to Uganda, adopted a dozen orphans, and started Amazima Ministries. That sound right? No, nobody cares. Fact check. I wanted to be just like them. I wanted to travel the world and make a difference. But most importantly, I wanted to show God that I was willing to do anything for him. I made a foolproof plan: radical obedience, helping the poor, African kids, all the things God likes. What could go wrong? Well, as it turned out, a lot. Being sold out for God isn't a bad thing. We should be willing to follow wherever he leads. The problem is that it can easily turn into another legalistic way to prove our love for God. Here are a few things I wish someone had told me before I went radical. Here we go. Number 1, you can develop a Messiah complex. There are plenty of stories in the Bible about Jesus healing the sick and feeding the hungry. But what about all the people he wasn't able to help? If Jesus had been obsessed with helping everyone, he wouldn't have had time to party or fish or preach or do any of the other things we see him do in the Gospels. So if Jesus didn't feel the need to do it all, why do we? Maybe we're just meant to love the person in front of us. That's the example we see in Jesus and in his parables, especially the one about the Good Samaritan. The hero in the story doesn't save the world, he just loves his neighbor.
That's funny because Jesus is like the one guy that actually has the right to have a Messiah complex, and he never does. I mean, like he's marching towards Jerusalem. That literally the spiritual fate of the entire universe is resting on what he's about to do, and he stops to have a conversation with a couple of guys on the way. He's like, "Hey, let's hang out and chat." He has a date with destiny, and he's got to be there by Passover or else. And he just kind of takes his time, goes through life.
I'll do what I want to do.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, I don't know. That sound about right? Yeah. Have you seen that in people? Feeling the burden of having to handle all for having to got involved with some?
Oh yeah, I see it all the time. People in ministry. I mean, it's kind of hard answering God's call and then also seeing God involved in it, because it means that you end up seeing both the need, but you also see that God's sovereignty is involved in it, and it's this weird duality of it. You're in touch with what's going on, but you also have to be in touch with what's going on. And I know that sounds strange, but seeing the need is seeing how people are going around and they're hungry. They have needs. They're starving in one way, shape, or form. But you also have to trust that ultimately it's all in God's hands, and that's hard to do at the same time especially when needs are right there in your face.
Well, actually, I get a lot of ministry guilt from dudes involved in stuff like that, and they be like, "Hey, you got to come do this. It's a blah 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 blah. You got to do." I'm like, no.
No, I don't.
No. And they go, well, how can you do that? I have a heart for blah, 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 and you got to, I'm like, listen, I hear what you're saying. And there's not sometimes when the Lord doesn't send a guy to yell at me and open my eyes to a perspective. But, like, I'm happy the Lord has you pointed in the direction. He didn't point me in that same direction, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't burden everyone else with what the Lord has given you unless he's told you to burden somebody with it and say, look, here's what I want you to go get this guy, or tell these people, or cast out a net, and I'll put the fish that I want in the net. But like I get that a ton, where people trying to get me involved in a bunch of stuff. I'm like, listen, if I join you, if I do what you're asking me to do, I basically have to tell the Lord no on the 5 other things that He's asked me to do. So the answer is no, friend. And boy, they get snippy. They get kind of snippy.
It's
Francis Chan had the book Crazy Love, and people, then there was a small group study as well, and a lot of groups are going through that and talking about it and having those conversations. And God hasn't called everyone to sell their house, and He hasn't called everyone to leave their jobs and dig a hole and live in some third world country and try to reach them for Jesus. I mean, he does call some.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden everybody was like trying to sell everything and it was just kind of a fad almost.
Yeah,
all
well,
the
and
stories
it's funny because it's the opposite coin of pharisaical behavior, right? Like, this is the behavior we're looking for. Do the behavior. Don't worry about knowing God or talking to the Holy Spirit or looking for Jesus. Just do this behavior, like selling all your crap and living in poverty and expect other people to pick up all your bills.
Yeah.
And then everything will be fine, right? And once again, if that's what the Lord laid on your heart and you took a couple steps that direction, and He's like,
Then go
yeah,
for it."
yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Okay, great, let's do this thing. But maybe before you sell every single thing that you got, you might want to say, is right now, Lord, right? This is what you want. Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, great, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, sometimes people get into that to try and legitimize a faith that they're struggling with. It's like, hey, I'm very unsure of this, and I feel like if I do this, then it'll legitimize what I believe in, and that's it's tough. It's something that it's a road for burnout ultimately, because you end up you're taking your faith in your own hands, and so you're trusting in yourself, and you're going to burn out, and you're calling others to end up doing the same, and you can see it because they aren't satisfied in what they're doing. They're always seeing a need for more, and there's nothing that's going to sustain them because it's ultimately them pulling from their own backpack. And then they're just asking others to come in and join them in this very unsatisfied type approach to life.
Well, and I think that's the thing, is that there's a legitimate, they're reacting to something that's probably legitimate in their life. Like, God is calling them to something. It's just they're not reacting to what God has for them specifically. They're just reacting to God's call in their own way. And you're right, it doesn't have teeth and it doesn't sustain itself. Because
I want a faith that's special, and I want to be involved in some of these great stories and wonderful signs and things like that. And that desire is it's a good thing, but it's something that's founded on you trusting God, and it's not something that the trust comes after that. It's that the trust comes first, then the obedience, then come the awesome stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is like, it's probably the wrong thought to think that God doesn't have something for you. I think He most certainly does. He's got something that He's probably calling for you to let go of, or calling for you to pull towards. It's just that you didn't actually approach God and attempt to figure that out. You just felt guilty for a minute because you saw someone else doing what God has called them to do, and then reacted in some sort of arbitrary way to try to fill that void, when really it was just draw closer to Jesus and it will reveal itself, and be ready for whatever it is. And I think some of that's just a guilt thing too, is where we say, I haven't been doing anything, I must have to do this thing. And really the truth is we overreact because we underreacted to begin with. We're just listening to God. Like, those types of things that you see kind of things that go on in Crazy Love, and you say to yourself, hey, cool, look at what God's got that guy doing. As opposed to, oh shoot, I stink, maybe God has me doing that very same thing. Like that isn't you sharing what God has other people doing, as opposed to having it look and be a burden upon your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Thanks, Booba. All right, so that was number one. Number two, 6 problems with trying to be sold out for Jesus. Number 2 was there's no room for ordinary. We can get so focused on changing the world somewhere else that we ignore the people all around us who need our help too. Yes, some people are called to go overseas, but some of us are called to stay. I didn't need to move to Africa to feed the hungry. There are soup kitchens in my hometown that need volunteers every day. But that felt too ordinary. It didn't require much sacrifice, and truthfully, it wasn't as glamorous as moving overseas. As a Christian, I thought if my life looked boring, I was doing something wrong. Sometimes, in our desperation to do something big for God, we forget that it's okay to be normal. Not only that, but we miss out on all the small, beautiful things we can do right here at home.
Yeah, once again, I think that jumps right off the first. The first one is I mean, do you know Jesus? Like, are you asking him? You talking to him? You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like he flushes all this stuff out, and then like after you get some confirmation and you start doing some stuff, you got to rock that. Like you gotta take the confidence that the God of the universe said this is what you're doing, and go, look, I can take all kinds of sneers and I can take all kinds of input from other people, but like the rock don't move. I move when the rock moves. Rock says I'm going this way, and that's what I'm doing. And if that means that I slug out a 40-hour-a-week job and casually talk to people about Jesus when their heart is ready, then that's what I'm doing, because that's the mission field I got. Do I feel kind of bad standing next to the guy that's been burrowed down in a tent for like 6 months? Yeah, kind of. But the Lord will sustain me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but not everyone gets to that point in their relationship with God that they're able to talk with him. A lot of us were introduced to God through someone else, and then we continue to be in this state of just being a child growing, but entirely dependent on some other human being. And if we haven't gotten really our own relationship with God going, then we're still, our life course is being mapped out by someone else, and that's not going to be the right course for us. I mean, no matter how much wisdom and discernment you've got, you don't have the right life course for me. God does. That's something I've got to get from him.
Yeah. And actually, so the example is a perfect one, right? When you look at Francis Chan and Crazy Love, right? When you read some of the stories that go on there, when you see that stuff happen, you should think, I want what he has. And it's not because of that he sold his place or did all this jazz. Like when I heard that story, I thought, I want to be obedient like him. That's what I want. Like, and I don't know what that means for me. It means something different for me than it does. But I see him and I see he was. When you see stuff like that, you go, I want that obedience. And that's a perfect time to start praying and say, Lord, help me to see obedience when it's coming. Help me to see where I can be obedient and where I'm struggling and fisting back, so I know what to do.
And I think going along to the original point that the author had here was that obedience could be to do something that's not going overseas. That obedience could be doing something that's completely in your neighborhood right now, and then making sure that your ego is not getting in the way of what you think God is calling you to do.
I'm built for overseas work.
Yeah, right. Like, who are you glorifying if God is not calling you to go overseas, but you are completely the one who's pushing everything about you're going over there, and God keeps showing you stuff that's happening right in front of your face, and it's truly not on you to be the one who goes over. I mean, there's people who do, but I think that's a total ego thing, and it's something on something that you should step back on. Who am I glorifying when I'm not okay with doing something that's right in my hometown?
Yeah, I'd like to help with that local whatever, but I'm overseas, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen me recently, but I'm definitely the dude that needs to be in Haiti right now.
Yeah.
It's just like, is that truly what's happening right now? Or are you putting your name in the spotlights right now rather than God's?
I think it's part maybe of our narcissistic society. We'll read through the Bible and we interject our own selves. Well, I should be David. I should be the guy slaying the giant. Well, I should be Moses. I mean, that'd be kind of cool, standing on the rock and parting the sea or getting water from a rock. And it's like, no, those were like, how about the guy who was pulling the cart? I mean, he was doing a very valuable thing too. They all have a place. Moses happens to be the guy that they've talked about for generations because he was so unique. I'm not that special. I mean, I if God calls me to do it, I'll do it. But like you said, do what God calls you to do, not what you hope He's calling you to do, because it kind of sounds cool. So yeah, obedience is the big thing there.
Be Enoch.
Enoching it.
Enoch,
Did you,
man.
Dan? Did you use the example of the guy that was pulling the cart that saved that died? Is that who you had in your mind?
I was just generically a cart. You know, I'm sure there were a lot of carts.
That's the first guy that popped into my mind. It's the guy that stunk at it and died.
No, not that guy.
I thought, well, don't do that.
I was gonna say,
bummer.
don't be okay with being that guy. That's awful, man.
That was always a confusing story to me. It's
dude's
like,
who
he
cocked
had
the
a
Ark of
noble
Covenant.
thing. He's trying to keep the ark from falling down. The guy's like, no,
Oh no!
I'll take care of myself.
We need guys who are going to live their lives in a way that's spectacularly consistent, not
Yeah.
just spectacular at one time.
For 300
And,
years.
you know, that was the thing is, and I thought of this after I said it. Because it was a sermon a couple weeks ago, and it had to do with like we're not crazy. We're Christians. Like crazy things happen. Like people should be looking at your life and be like, boy, something is going on over there. But like, it's not to imply that you have to conjure up something crazy. I think what we're saying is that like being faithful to God in your normal everyday life will produce situations on its own of which you're like, what the heck? You know, like you're gonna meet people at work and you're gonna have interactions with them and you're gonna see lives changed or conversations that you never thought you'd have, and you're like, God does that. That's crazy. Like it's that type of thing. You don't have to create a circus and ask God to join it. You have to be faithful in the means, and God will bring the circus.
I'll be devoted. I'll let God bring the crazy.
Yeah.
Even Moses, you know, one of the most talked about guys in the Bible. It's not like Heath probably didn't think he had a spectacular life. I mean, he was 80 before finally, I guess now it's time for my assignment. I mean, that's a long time to wait. That's a lot of a mediocre walking around the desert caring for sheep, you know. Jesus, I mean, you know, you get a little information about him, but until he's like 30,
Right.
there's nothing happening.
Yeah.
He's just, you know, he's learning, he's doing his thing, but nothing spectacular. So yeah, we want spectacular like every week. You know, we want our daily update. You know, to have this is what God did. You know, mountains moved and it's not always that way.
All right, let's see. Where were we at? Number. This list is taking forever. 3, you constantly feel guilty. Problem with trying to be sold out for Jesus, you constantly feel guilty. Millennials are arguably the most informed generation to date, but we also feel the most burdened. We feel like if we're not doing it, Buva, is that true?
No. We are not informed at all. Just because we have a plug-in to social media doesn't mean we use it for the right reasons. If you feel like you're informed because you can tell what your relationship status is and all of your friends' relationship status, doesn't mean you know a thing about the world.
I also might make the case that like there's a generation of people who do not feel the most burdened.
Yeah, we are the least informed generation probably ever.
I think you have just so much quantity of information, but no real quality. You don't approach things from a, hey, let's make sure we get all the basics in order and then build upon that foundation. It seems more like just throw everything at millennials.
Yeah. Not to go on a tangent here, but I mean, we have access to vast amounts of information. We have access to YouTube, which is literally an online compendium of videos.
Human
that
knowledge.
of
essentially.
human knowledge. Yeah, you can go on YouTube and figure out pretty much anything you need to do, whether that be fixing a car or fixing a house or cooking a meal or something like that. You can go onto Facebook and you can look up articles that have to do with current events and all kinds of things throughout the world from different perspectives and from different social norms. Yet all we care about is the next funny cat video. It's sad, and we're not informed.
Cats are cool.
No, that's true. Like look at these 5 movies that Michael J. Fox turned down. Oh, no doubt. I didn't know he turned down that movie.
Yeah. Let's talk about the newest cute video. It has to do with a baby, or let's talk about something that makes me laugh more than something that makes me think. We're a generation that are stimulated within 7.5 seconds of laughter rather than 25 minutes of learning.
You know what? I had this conversation with one of my kids the other day. We were talking about like how much of your day is spent being entertained, like on any level, like not just with technology, but like how much of the day are you spending entertaining yourself? Like you sound like a crazy person.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, this generation, it makes me sad. And I fully acknowledge that I'm part of this, by the way. I'm working on it, and God's kind of trying to draw me out of that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have Netflix, we have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have all the other social media sites, we have everything there. We have Google that literally has links to hundreds of thousands of ridiculous things that we can learn on a daily basis. Yet all we Google is the newest trend that's going on with the Kardashians.
Right. How do I comb my hair, Google?
So So how do you comb your hair and then get made fun of by people for it? Especially Chinese girls. So okay, sorry. That was my random break off from that.
All right, so millennials have a bunch of information, but they don't do.
We have the ability to be informed. Keep going, Ben.
Sorry. Let's see. We feel like if we're not doing everything we can to help, we're part of the problem. Yes. And
Yeah,
the fact that we live
Social
in
activism? Yeah.
yeah. And the fact that we live in an affluent society when most of the world is suffering doesn't help either. Agreed. In the Bible, Jesus asked a rich young ruler to sell everything he owns and give the money to the poor. The man is unwilling to part with his earthly possessions, and so we're told he's unable to enter the kingdom of heaven. Christians often use this story to warn of the dangers of holding on to our lives too tightly. It's meant to convict us and inspire us to take up our cross and follow Jesus. And it works, because guilt is a powerful motivator. I would disagree with that outcome. Everything probably up to that point, but I'm not sure it is the notion of guilt.
Yeah, I don't like using guilt.
No, it's a
I abhor it, actually.
it's
I
a
find
motivation of truth.
I find Jesus the enemy of guilt.
Yeah.
Crap,
Like-
that's my main conduit for getting stuff
It
done.
really is. It sure is.
Yeah.
In fact, more often than not, he's saving us from, among other things, guilt. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So he says, but here's the thing, full colon. Jesus didn't use guilt. In fact, he let the rich young ruler walk away. For all, as opposed to what? Like roping him, tying him to Judas.
Struck down. He used 5 fresh whiffs.
For all we know, the rich young ruler may have spent the rest of his life being generous and helping others. Or maybe that wasn't Jesus' point at all. In the end, it's grace, not guilt, that gives us the freedom to do good.
Here's the deal: people understand guilt way easier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
His guilt comes with consequence, and they get it, and they feel it, and they can go, "Yeah, I should have, would have, could have." You know, but like grace, it's almost incomprehensible apart from Jesus to understand. You know what I'm saying? Like people have a hard time, and this is true with Jesus across the board. Like if you tell people the story of Christ, they will buy in it, and then they'll say, "I hear what you're saying. I just don't understand grace," because they will never run into it apart from the stuff that Jesus is offering in a realistic and understandable way. But guilt, they can definitely get. They got it from their grandma, their mom, their dad, and their creepy uncle at the family reunion.
But guilt's a natural language of the world. I
Yeah.
mean, so grace is introducing something new. So you can't just talk about it in an academic way. You can't just leave it for discussion. It really has to be demonstrated in every way that you can. You have to live grace, and that's tough.
Yeah, so what's weird, though, is that, like, in this premise here, I would agree that Jesus isn't using guilt, but, like, if we're supposed to think of that story in the nature of grace, I actually think it should still have the same outcome. He still should have sold everything he owned and gave it to the poor. We should notice that we live in an affluent society when most of the world is suffering, and should consider that whether we are to have some level of impact of that or not. And we feel like if we're not doing anything that we're part of the problem, that's implicitly true. Not every problem, but certainly some problems.
It has to do with Jesus respected the guy making his choice. He just plainly said, "Here's what's going to be needed for you to get involved in this," and just left it very simply. He didn't come around behind after the guy had made a decision and tried coercing him one direction or another and using persuasive language or anything. He just simply said, "Here's what's going on. Here's what you're going to have to do." And then left the choice to the guy. There was no guilt involved. There was no character attack or anything like that. It was just, here's what's going on. Your choice. Your call.
So I guess what I'm saying though is like it's kind of it's a bit of a non sequitur. I think like where this direction of this came from. We're burdened. We feel the most burdened. Like you constantly feel guilty as a problem for trying to be sold out to Jesus. I think the outcome of I feel like you should feel burdened. But just it's not because you're guilty for not helping. It's just because you love people, and that creates a burden in your life of which you want to help.
Yeah.
Am I thinking of that wrong?
No, it's awareness.
You're right.
Okay.
You're aware of the problems that are going on. You're aware of the hole that's created in the society that God can fill, and being aware of that at all times. There's no detriment to that. Understanding that that's going on and then actively pursuing a way to fix that, whether that be in one specific area or whether that be in a broad spectrum, whether that be, giving some money to people doing adoptions and then spending time with people in the area that are orphans or that are widows or homeless people, whatever that may be, just being aware of those situations, maybe not necessarily feeling guilt about it, but definitely feeling that burden, like you were saying, understanding that it's happening and realizing that you can be a help.
Because I feel like that's our kingdom work, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
We're part of God's process of setting wrongs right. And so, like, I don't need to feel guilty about it. I need to be motivated and excited that God's got me part of what he's going on, and that I can be part of that.
Yeah, but if your entire focus is just on the hole that needs to be filled, and you forget about the fact that God is in there and that ultimately he's got control of it, then you feel like you have to be the one to not just fill it yourself, but motivate other people to fill it. And so you'll pull into every tool and tactic that you have. And if you don't know that using guilt is something that's actually more detrimental than anything else, then you're gonna pick up that tool as well, because anyone who grew up in the world knows how to use guilt.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like he could have said that better. I can feel like he's talking about two separate premises there. Moving on.
Yeah.
6 problems trying to be sold out for Jesus. Number 4, you start acting like a Pharisee. When you're obsessed with being a real Christian, you start noticing Christians all around you who don't seem to fit the bill.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, you start pointing fingers.
Yeah.
I thought I was some kind of prophet, preaching a lifestyle of sacrifice and self-abandon that I expected everyone to follow.
Well, that's where I stopped being able to. Okay, go ahead.
But my concern for the suffering was making me insufferable. My passion had turned into misery. I wasn't being a prophet, I was being a Pharisee. And by sneaking legalism into a freeing gospel, I turned Jesus into a Pharisee too. It's much harder to spot legalism when it's disguised compassion, but here's a telltale sign: it always ends in despair.
Yeah, so like I was guilty of this kind of for a while, because a lot of the people that I run into have had encounters with the church. I won't say Jesus, but the church, and like they would tell me all their horror stories on this happened. I'm like, man, that's not the way that Jesus intended for this to go down, right? And I would start to kind of borderline taking the opportunity to show their legalism or show their brand of whatever Jesus they're selling compared to the one that I was trying to explain, and how theirs suck. and some of it was just frankly true. Like they'd taken, the Lord's stuff and used it to beat people over the head with it, and was doing it not out of love. But like there was times when I would just take that, like the best selling point of the gospel was the whole gospel you've heard up to this point was trash, but none of it was true. And the problem is it sucked in a bunch of people that probably love Jesus. And I probably slandered them unnecessarily, and so I find this very easy to do.
Yeah,
I feel like one of the general themes of all of these is we're trying to take God's role into our own hands, and it's ultimately God that is going to convince a person of what's true. I mean, I will go out and, as much as I can, tell them, hey, here's what I found to be true about God. If they accept it or not, that's between them and God. I don't need to be pushing it on them or beyond that. I just present them with it. They pick it up. If they don't believe me, and they just continue on in the way that they've been living, I ultimately need to just let it go into God's hands and be okay with that, and just have peace with the fact that I'm not here to fix everything in the universe, and I don't need to fix them, and I don't need to fix that, and whatever else. I can ultimately just leave it to God to straighten out their theology, or mine, as is more often the case.
I think I see that a lot in. It seems to be a phase a lot of newer believers will go through, especially. They get so excited about the changes going on in their life that they kind of project it on everybody else. They'll see what their old habits in other people and try to correct them on everything, and I think that's part of them becoming a disciple and a follower of Jesus is learning to, hey, slow down there a little bit, let God be God, and you worry about yourself, and it's a stage, I think, that people go through, and this guy or gal, whatever it was, has struggled with it sounds like, and it could be not only as a new believer, but when you have a new area of growth and you get into a new area of service maybe you've never done before, suddenly everybody needs to be doing it. Why aren't they doing it? If they love Jesus, they'd be here. So just, I think it's part of our human weakness. We get excited about something, we want everybody else to be excited about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's true. Some of that is people's excitement that they're not carrying that burden anymore, and they may be doing it completely unselfishly. Like, I see you're carrying that burden. Jesus lifts that burden. Let's talk about this and why you need to let that go. Like, so it's not completely selfish, or personal kingdom building that they're doing it, but it is a bit ambitious, maybe.
Yeah. Yep. Hey, here's the deal. If you're listening on the Truth Network, 99.3 FM, we've got to let you go.
Yeah.
Amen.
Make sure you go to lifeandpath.org. You can check out what we're doing during the week. Visit our sponsors, Bob Eisenhower with the EisenhowerTeam.com and WestfieldVetHospital.com. You know what?
What are we listening to?
Seriously, man, you made this creepy. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, all you ladies and gentlemen out there listening on Radio Land,
It's lounge night. This Saturday night on the Truth Network.
this is the Ben Show.
I'm not saying you
We
have
gotta talk
buy
about
ice cream.
smooth jazz, spending time in the dark corners of a jazz club.
All right. You know, we're going to let you go. If you're listening to the podcast, God bless you.
We appreciate you.
We'll be right back with you. Don't you go nowhere.
We'll be back on the Ben Show.
Faithful in the means, for heaven's sakes. You've been listening. God handle the ends. You've been listening to Life in the Path.
Well, you come on so tough.
Yeah.
This song is called I Hate You.
Is that Mahalia Jackson?
No. This is our buddy Scott Henderson. He does all our actually a good majority of our outro tunes.
Yeah, he's all right.
He's this guy. This is him.
Yeah.
Hey, man, that's more us.
Yeah.
That's how we send people out.
Not this lounge time that you're trying to play it around as. All right. We appreciate you
You're
on
on
Life
late
in the
night with the
Path.
lizard.
It was so I have a list of songs that I use from Spotify, and like the one I was looking for by him wasn't there. And so I thought this song was on the list, and I thought, well, I've never played that one, but I must have listened to it at some point and said, oh, that'd be a good one, because it's in my list of Live from the Path tunes. And I don't know what I was
Hey,
thinking.
man, remove it. Remove it.
Yeah, when we need to put our audience to sleep, that's the one we're
Exactly.
gonna.
If you're going to pass out on the podcast, stay tuned.
Here's the deal.
You're listening to
If
Delilah.
we're going to put our audience to sleep, we're going to do it ourselves, doggone it.
That's the truth.
I'm not farming that out to some internet man.
We'll sing lullabies before we put that out there.
All right, let's get through these last two, and then we're going to do a live, Dear Life from the Path, and we're going to call this thing a night. Here we go. Number 5, problems with trying to be sold out for Jesus. Number 5, you could fall into blind devotion.
Yeah.
Sometimes when all you want is to be used by God, it's not a stretch to allow yourself to be used by others as well.
Yes.
I experienced this when I fell into the hands of an abusive ministry in Africa.
Whoa.
Every aspect of my
That's
life was under
terrifying.
its control. What I did, who I spent my time with, and even what I said on my personal blog.
That's a cult.
It's
They do that, yeah.
No
It's-
holds barred with Mike.
its leaders lied about and they misused donor money.
Oh,
Okay.
They even held or instant submission. Sometimes susceptible you are to spiritual abuse.
Hey, look, man, you're just a dummy. You
Wow.
got suckered into
It's-
some stuff.
It's funny that what a lot of ministries will get away with, things that just would not fly in the secular world, and we just create this culture of you need to sacrifice, you must die to yourself, but ultimately the undercurrent of that is I want you to do exactly what I tell you to do type of thing. It ends up becoming a control issue using Christian rhetoric, and it's very common, and it's something that probably the most susceptible people to it are women getting involved in ministry. The kind of abuse that happens are things that you'd be going to court for in any kind of secular setting. So yeah, watch out for that. And it's not just internationally, but
Oh, no.
Shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got some happy birthday cards I need to return, I guess, based upon what Eric's talking about. One of them had a donkey on it. It seems to be inappropriate in light of what he was saying. All right, let's see. It's just a joke.
I don't know why we're laughing. This is sad.
No, it's not. It's not even a funny joke.
All right.
All right. Let's see. That was it. Anybody else fall into blind?
Yeah, I
devotion?
mean, a freaking one of those should have been like, hey, wait a minute, this ain't. That's the difference between knowing the difference between rhetoric and the Lord.
yeah.
This don't seem right.
Yeah, I guess like I'm having trouble. Well, so I guess I understand, Herrick, what you're saying. Like if you're trying, people feel like there's some level of devotion, but like, I'm trying to figure out like what naturally causes people to attach that to an organization or a person that's not Jesus.
Well, take for example,
It's a
Francis
cause,
Chan
usually.
goes through to this thing of crazy love, right? And then you're like, okay, I'm gonna go down to his compound or whatever, hang out with him. He seems like a pretty solid guy. And then you get there and he does a bunch of weird stuff, and you're like, yeah, but crazy love was life changing. He loves Jesus. He sold all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like you let a little bit carry you a long way when maybe that boat should only hold water for, I don't know, a couple minutes.
Sometimes a person will come along very well-meaning, and they want your sacrifice for themselves instead of to God. And it's interesting. I was just reading the way that Paul described it is the church that was giving in Macedonia, and he's bragging to the church in Corinth about what they're doing. And he said they gave this to the Lord, and then he entrusted it to us to be used as our ministry. And a lot of people will kind of skip the whole "this was given to the Lord" thing, and they will just take it for themselves.
Oh, right,
And so they'll go up to people looking for a donation from the person to them directly, and skipping the whole role of God involved in all of the situation. And yeah,
I actually, this is funny, and it was petty on my part, but I had a conversation with a pastor one time. They have a playground in their church, and one of the houses I was at backed right up to it. And we let the kids go out and play on this playground. And he's like, "Hey, that's for people who go to church here." I'm like, "Hey, man, people gave that money to the Lord, not to you. And the Lord built this playground. We're gonna play on it, okay?" And he's like, "No, you have to be a member of this church." I'm like, "Ooh, kids, you stay away from that man. I'm the man." But like, that's the mindset, right? Like, God gave me this building for these people, for this church, and this is what it's for. And I decided we were going to buy brass plates with it and serve communion on them or whatever. And this is what I decided, and blah 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 blah. And like, they do follow that mindset where this stuff is for me or my ministry, not for the Lord or how He intended to use it.
Yeah. All right, last one. Number 6. 6 problems trying to be sold out to Jesus. Number 6. You never seem to measure up. My biggest fear was that I would miss God's call, or worse, that I would fail His test. I used to measure my devotion to God because secretly I thought He was too. When unbearable circumstances forced me to leave Africa, I felt like a total failure. After all, I wasn't just letting the world down, I was letting God down. When I came home, a friend asked if I thought God loved me less. I said no. But that got me thinking. It's true, God doesn't love us any less when we fail. But what took me longer to realize is that God doesn't love us any more when we succeed either. The problem with trying to prove your love for God is that in trying to prove yours, you end up trying to earn His. Suddenly, your relationship with God becomes all about what you do rather than what He has already done. Jesus was a sacrifice to end all sacrifices, so there's nothing more we need to do. If we were any good at being radical, there would be no need for Jesus, and that's the whole point.
From these 6 things that this author has pointed out that are problems with being sold out for Jesus, it doesn't seem like they're reasons to be sold out for Jesus. It feels like 6 things that they're sold out for the work and the actions.
Yeah.
This isn't someone chasing after Jesus. This is someone chasing after the actions. If you are thinking that you're qualified for God's love or for Jesus' grace or for the sacrifice based off of what you're doing, well, great job checking the boxes. You went to Africa. You did the right things, going to the right places. You did the radical things when it came to quitting college and all that different stuff. But that's not what we're after. That's not what the point is. You're missing the whole point, which is your relationship with Jesus. That's the most important thing. The actions are going to come. The works are going to come. That's not the most important thing. You need to realize that you should seek first the heart of God. You need to be seeking Jesus. And if that's your main point, and if that's your main situation, you're no longer worried about, am I doing quality work? Am I doing crazy enough stuff for Him? It's not from that perspective. It's, am I doing the right things for Him that He has called me to do? Whether that be in my backyard or whether that be 3,000 miles away, whatever it be, glorify Him, make it about Him, and stop making it about the works that you can do and how well you can do them.
So this is something that happens when you replace Jesus the person with Jesus as just a method or a recipe to follow. And then we end up glorifying some kind of Christian lifestyle. And Jesus has no place in that. And we just reduce him down to a couple of statements and platitudes and say, all right, now do this. Instead of getting to know Jesus and just responding to Him, we end up responding to a type of Christian culture. And it's twisted because it's ultimately idolic, even though it's using God's own words against Him. It's pretty awful.
Yeah. All right. That was it. That was all the problems with trying to be sold out for Jesus. I think Boof has nailed it. I think you're right. I think they were trying to be sold out for Jesus is awesome.
Sell yourself out for Jesus.
What he's talking about is trying to sell yourself out to look like you're selling yourself out for Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake across the board. Yeah. Just do things genuinely, and you're going to be fine. Okay. All right, Mike, what do you got over there?
Dear Life from the Path. My sister and her husband are well-to-do, but cheap. They recently invited themselves to stay 3 nights in our Snowbird condo on their way to a vacation in the Caribbean. Snowbird condo, eh? Not exactly living light yourself.
What is that?
It's a second place that they have that they go in the wintertime.
Oh, okay.
My wife and I hosted them, and during their stay, we went out twice for dinner. Both times, my sister was quick to request separate bills. In the meantime, we had provided lodging and all their other meals for them. I'm offended that they didn't show appreciation for our hospitality by at least taking us to dinner once. I've wanted to confront my sister about my feelings, but my wife has vehemently told me I should not. What would you suggest?
I believe oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Dan.
I think the ethics on this is, as the host, they should have actually been reversed, and they should have provided the meal and the housing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tell you what you could do. You could look up the word generosity.
Yeah.
And love.
In your second home. Jeez. Here's the thing. You're trying to trade social protocols, right? Either you're going to be generous. That's the thing. If you're going to be generous to somebody, be prepared to be generous. And then be wowed if they choose to wow you. And if they don't wow you, just wow at the fact that you were able to be that generous. I feel like that's because then no matter what happens, you're wowed. You're a happy man. You feel some joy. You got to be very generous to somebody, or someone got to be generous to you. Either way, the trip goes done. Everybody's joyful, and good times were had by all.
Why would you trade a relationship for apparently the bill?
Yeah.
And that just seems strange to me. I mean, contact with human beings, that's what life is made of.
Yeah.
Finances?
No.
It comes and it goes.
Actually, I do that sometimes. Like, we'll go out to some kind of work lunch or something, and then it'll be time for the check. I'm like, I hope Boss Man covers the whole thing. I secretly, and then there's an awkward silence, and I'm like, he'll cover the whole thing. And then it turns out we're going to split them up. But still, like, there's still an awkward silence at the end of a group meal on who might cover the check. Is there a good way to handle that?
Yeah, just cover the check.
Yeah.
Just you offer to cover the check.
Yeah.
What if
Solves
like
that
10
problem.
people came out?
Solves that problem directly. Do you want to solve the problem or don't you?
I got to call my wife for to spend that kind of money.
You should give her a heads up. Say, dudes are going out. Might have to spend big money.
The people at the table would be like, wow, why is it that Mike keeps covering this? Is he made of money? Then
Yeah.
they come up and they say, do you have some kind of financial backer? And then you say, yeah, God.
Yeah, I have a backer, the Lord Jesus. They love that. Evangelism would spread wide in the Mexican restaurant.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Leave it alone. No, you shouldn't bring it up.
Does anyone want to say, hey, you should talk to him about this thing?
No.
All right, Secular says, I see 2 ways of dealing with this. Keep your mouth shut, avoid confrontation, and the next time your sister tells you she's coming for a visit, roll up the welcome mat, saying you already have other plans. Or you can tell your sister how you feel. Personally, I think it would be healthier to express your feelings because your sister's and her husband's behavior was rude. It shows that because people have money doesn't necessarily mean they have class.
Well, that's a real bummer.
Yeah, here's the thing is I wish I could go around my entire life judging people by how much money they have. Because that sounds like a whole lot of fun. Or you could just be generous to whoever it is and send them on their way.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah. I agree. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut this thing out of here. Thanks for listening to Life from the Path. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on the podcast. Hey,
Dear Life from the Path.
Sign up for Twitter. Hey, hook us up with the Twitter. Facebook's really causing us big troubles. You can't really see our stuff. So if you want to engage with us at all, go to the Twitter, look for Life from the Path, and we'll hook up with you there. And I think that's it. Stay faithful to me. God will handle the ends. And next time you think you're going to say something clever about some kind of card with a donkey on it, you just let that pass. It's not funny. Thanks for listening to Life in the Path.
I have a question about how to handle a situation